What's going on, everybody? Thank you for checking out this video. Today we're going to be talking about Regal's little mystery movie that they decided to show us today. And the movie that they decided to show is The Greatest Beer Run Ever, starring Zac Efron, directed by Peter Farrelly. Now, I didn't know anything about this movie, so I'm going in as clean as I possibly can. I'm not going to get into any of the spoilers in this video. I'm just going to give you guys my spoiler-free thoughts. So the film tells the story of Chicky Donahue, who decides to take over some beers to his friends fighting a Vietnam War in 1967. However, once he gets down there, he sees that there is a different side to war, and so we begin this little fish out of water while having a nice little journey. And like I said, I didn't know anything about this film. I just knew that Zac Efron was in it, and boy, the film is not getting the best response right now. But I am probably going to be in the minority when it comes to this film because I absolutely loved it. This film is not going to be for everybody, but I can see why some people might not like it. I absolutely adored this film, and it was just a wonderful surprise. I've always been a fan of Zac Efron ever since his High School Musical days, and watching his career progress and grow is something that I've actually loved seeing him. This is another step in the right direction for him, showing that he has chops to grow and be able to be a wonderful actor, because I know a lot of people really don't see him as this huge actor, but in my eyes, he is fantastic and he shines in this movie. This movie is basically him taking beers over to his friends from his neighborhood, and you're basically following him through the trepidations of war. The first two acts is just dark comedy after dark comedy, and it just doesn't feel like it's stopping. And once we get into the third act of the film, that's when a lot of the war images and a lot of the war sequences start seeping into him, and that is where the film actually gets a little bit darker and a little bit deeper. There's a lot of connections that he makes throughout the entire film that gets him from point A to point B in order for him to complete the mission that he is set upon, because he usually isn't the one to go out and do the things he says he will. And so when he decides to do this journey, not a lot of people will see him through it and think that he's going to quit. However, once he gets down there, that's when he decides, you know what, this is a thing that I just set out to do, and I'm going to see it through from beginning to end, because he doesn't want to let his community down. And that is something that I absolutely loved about this film. This film is about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and so it does stretch it out just a little bit beyond its own little premise, but for the most part, I never felt like the film actually lacked any tension, even though this film is the tone is kind of everywhere. You have a little bit of dark comedy in the first two acts, and then it gets a little bit darker towards the end of the third act of the film, and that is where it's going to be shifting for a lot of people. But there are some great performances in this film that you get to see bits and pieces. There are some jokes in this film that actually do land, and I do think that the writing does help the film just a little bit, because I actually found myself caring for Zac Efron's safety once he gets into the battlefield and he experiences what war is actually like. And even though he is not believing what the media is actually saying, because in the media's eyes, America is winning the war, but once he gets into the battlefield and he actually sees what's actually happening, then that's when he starts going and saying, yo, what you're reading is not actually what's happening. And so I really enjoyed that premise. I thought that actually worked for me, and it's probably going to not work for a lot of people, but I personally like that we had that little dichotomy, that little shift between the media and what he's actually seeing. And even though it does get a little heavy with the war, sometimes during that third act, it does sprinkle in a little bit of humor and a little bit of relief, so we are able to catch our breath. But I was mostly holding my breath for that last act, because it does get a little bit heavy, it does get a little bit intense, and you start to get worried for this guy who you don't know if he's going to make it out alive or not and be able to complete the mission. There's a scene in the third act of the film that Zac Efron actually impressed me a lot, because it was mostly Zac Efron's emotions and just the way that the character was portrayed, and everything about this film was handled in the right way. it's just that little tone where the first two acts of the film is just a lot of humor, a lot of jokiness, and then once we get into that third act of the film, that's where it gets a little bit more heavier and it starts getting a little bit more tense for everybody watching, because it is a lot of war violence. It's not too gruesome. There are some sequences where it's hard to watch, but I personally love this film. I thought the writing was great. There were some moments in the film where it just felt like it was stretching it out just a little bit, mostly because once Chicky gets to where he is supposed to go, he convinces the vets that he's a CIA agent in order for him to get from point A to point B. And there are some moments in that middling act where it gets stretched just a little bit. But personally, Zac Efron has grown as an actor, and this film makes him shine, because I absolutely loved it in this film. From time to time, his New York accent comes and goes, but for the most part, he did a really good job of portraying Chicky in this film. I think the performances were great. Not a lot of vets get a lot of screen time in this film, but you're mostly following Chicky trying to get these beers to the vets. I didn't know anything about this film, and I came out pleasantly surprised. Overall, I'm going to go ahead and give The Greatest Beer Run Ever an 8.5 out of 10. It is a fantastic film that I'm probably going to be in the minority that actually loved this film. It was at times funny, it was emotional, it was heartbreaking, and there were a lot of tense moments in this film where you felt for our character, and we were hoping that he's able to make it out safely so he can come back home to his family. And we also are hoping that these vets also come home safely, and seeing the journey that this character goes on to and what actually happened. This film was actually fantastic. I absolutely adored this film. This film is dropping on Apple Plus this weekend, so if you do get a chance to check it out in theaters, run out and check it out, because I think it is great seeing it on the big screen. But if you don't, but it's not one that you actually have to run out to see in theaters, so check it out when it starts streaming this Friday. This review is going to be coming out a little bit early, but are you excited for this film? Do you have any expectations? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below, and also let me know what is your favorite Zac Efron performance. Go ahead and drop those thoughts there, and if you like this video, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on more videos. Click that bell notification so you get notified every single time that a video pops up, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.